Hi there, and welcome to this developer podcast. My name is Tabitha, and I'm the head designer and lead writer of an upcoming game you've probably never heard of called The Kingsport Cases. I'm going to go ahead and talk about why the horror game genre and procedural generation work really well together. For those of you who don't know what procedural generation is, think randomization. Imagine every time you loaded up a game, the map was different, the characters were different, and so on, but it was still the same game with the same premise. A good basic example is Minecraft, which, unless you see the generator, will likely show you a new map you've never seen before every time you start a new game. It's a simple, not fully evolved definition, but it will help you through to the end of this podcast. For now, I'm going to talk about the horror games, of course, and about what makes them uniquely entertaining and challenging. For me, that unique challenge is fear. Fear the player faces and eventually, if they want to beat the game, overcomes. Take the fear away and you're left with a puzzle adventure game, kind of like Myst, which is awesome, just not really in the genre of interest. So let's move on. What creates a sense of fear for players when they're playing a horror game? Immersion is the first thing that comes to mind for me. Giving the player the chance to feel like part of the world they're tossed into. In horror games, this translates into making the player, the real-life person, feel like what their character is feeling when a monster turns a corner or the lights suddenly blink out. Immersion is successful in a horror game when the player is frightened or nervous or creeped out. For me, I can always tell when I've been fully immersed in a game when I turn off the game, to go to bed and go do something else. But I can't go to sleep or go into a dark, area of the hallway because I'm afraid whatever monster was lurking about in that game is going to come out and attack me next. And this brings me to another creator of fear in the genre, the removal of security. When a player feels vulnerable, like the monster isn't just chasing their character, but them, it's a powerful thing. This is obviously another effect of immersion, of course, but I think you'll find they all kind of blend together anyway. Removing security also means giving the player little info in the beginning about the situation they're in. All horror games do it. Amnesia doesn't let you in on what is going on until you've marched through a maze of dark hallways and unsettling events, and Slender drops you in a lovely forest and simply asks you to find 8 pages without really telling you what that risk is. There's no problem in either case, right? Little info means little security, basically, and little certainty about what is ahead. Unpredictability, even, when we'll touch on that in a minute. A few last points on the removal of security, though. Making the player feel like they are in danger, and then tasking them with some grand quest they feel completely underprepared to do, is a great way to encourage fear within the player, or tension, even, which is my next and final point about fear. Tension is incredibly important in horror games, horror movies, horror stories, and even haunted houses. It's like in that moment right before getting a shot at the doctors, or before jumping out of a plane to skydive, or the second of motionless trepidation on a roller coaster right before it takes its first dip. Tension can sometimes be the scariest part of anything, is what I'm trying to say. Not necessarily what actually happens, but the build-up to it. I mean, you've all played horror games, I'm sure, and you ever feel that feeling when you just know there's going to be a jump scare around a corner? Yeah, that is tension. So, how is tension created? In my opinion, it isn't just jump scares. Jump scares release tension. They are useful tools, just not for tension building. It's not gore, either. Gore does not equal horror. Tension is atmosphere. Atmosphere is created through the art, the ambience, the story, and the soundtrack. I'm sure I'm missing others, but to me those are the essentials. And tension is also built with contrast, like when you move from well-lit areas in a game to dark ones, you know something is up. Giving the players a taste of light will make the dark that much more frightening. So, in short, immersion, removal of security, and tension create the sensation of fear which every horror game should strive to have. But how does procedural generation help with creating a sense of fear? The quickest, shortest, and best answer I can give is that it makes the game unpredictable. And I can hear all 2 of you watching this video being like, well, that's what procedural generation does. But, well and good. It makes a lot of sense if you, listen to what creates that sense of fear. Fear is created in 2 parts by the removal of security and tension. By having no info in an unfamiliar setting where you feel vulnerable because who knows what's around the next corner. Procedural generation guarantees that each time you play the game on a different run-through, things will be different, thus creating this, vulnerable, unfamiliar setting. You won't know where the key items are, you won't know where the monster spawns, you won't know who the bad guy is, you won't know which door has a scare behind it, you won't know anything, just like your character doesn't know anything. And there, is the immersion factor and the fear. If immersing players and making them feel vulnerable are key tenets in the horror genre, then I implore game developers interested in making those types of games to look into procedural generation. This method alone will not make a great horror game, of course, but with carefully crafted algorithms, a solid art, a good foundational story, and genuinely frightening scares, it will be well on its way to the wonderful kingdom of Riley. Please check out our website for the Kingsport cases, as you might have guessed via this talk. It is a fully procedurally generated survival game. Go ahead and check back regularly on the site. We're updating it twice a week with blogs and podcasts as we work up to the end of the month, when we're going to announce plans for our Kickstarter and demo launch. Again, thank you for listening to me ramble on. It's been real.